Good evening, bonsoir. My name is Marie-André Lessard. I'm a District 61 Club Sponsor and Mentor Chair. And tonight it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the English version of this webinar, New Club, Next Steps. So this is the English version. Please note, à noter, the French version, la version francophone, suivra à 20h ce soir, 8 o'clock tonight. Before to start, I would thank Mr. Craig Sr., who will be our Zoom manager tonight. And I will introduce our presenter. So first of all, having achieving multiple DTM, she has been responsible for mentoring and sponsoring club. As immediate past district director, she oversaw district sponsoring and mentoring program. And more than anything, she is a passionate Toastmaster who is committed to your success. Let's welcome Dalati, DTM.
Thank you very much, Marie-André, and it's a joy that I didn't have to provide that. I hate when people say what a passionate person they are, but I certainly appreciate when someone like yourself says that very thing. I'm very excited about this webinar. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to share some of the lessons I've learned over the years when I have both sponsored and mentored clubs. I promise there will be time in this webinar for questions. It's one of my pet peeves that the person speaks and then there's no time. So I promise there will be time. First, here's what we're going to talk about. Tanya and Marie-André wanted me to start from the initial meeting when a club is someone's idea or it's just beginning. I'm going to talk a bit about that, then I'm going to move into what the next steps are after that initial meeting, where to focus our energy, and what matters when you are chartering a new club. Then, once the club is chartered, fantastic, now what? And this is a very important aspect. Where do we focus our energy once the club is chartered, and what matters after that chartering has happened? As I mentioned, I've got opportunity for questions at the end. If someone has a burning question as we're moving along, I'm totally fine with answering it at that point. It won't bother me in the slightest. First, when we talk about an initial meeting, I wanted to make sure that we knew what it is. That very first demo meeting, either in the community or at some corporation or someone's business, it's an introduction to that corporation or the community about the Toastmasters educational program. In this particular case, we've got a program that we're very excited about, and we want to make sure that the people in front of us have a glimpse of how interesting, useful, and appropriate that educational program is going to be for them. The initial meeting also should talk about what's in it for me. And by what's in it for me, I'm talking about the people in front of you. Why should they care? Why does it matter that we are so excited and committed to this educational program? What's it going to mean for them? There should be highlights of what they can expect when a club charters. And by that, I mean, we talk about a club, but we keep in mind that a number of these people have never heard about Toastmasters, don't really understand why it's called a club. Therefore, we want to make sure that they get a sense of, here's what the program's all about, here's what it is going to be for you, And when we talk about chartering, here's some highlights. The club will actually be in existence, what Toastmasters looks like around the world, what we will be part of, that network, just giving them some highlights. And the last one is that initial meeting should have an opportunity to get questions that they have answered during that meeting. If they have any particular questions, whether it's what the format is, clarification on the program, anything of that matter, there should be time in that initial meeting to get those questions answered. We don't want them walking away, wondering about things, somehow not having had an opportunity to talk to someone. That's what the initial meeting is all about. Here's what it isn't. It's not a duplicate of a typical chartered club meeting. If we wanted that, we would indicate to these people, here's a list of already chartered clubs. Why don't you go and visit and see what a typical club looks like? So it's not going to be a duplicate of a chartered club. It's not going to have every single club meeting role that we might see in a typical club meeting. It's going to have the basics that are required that they can get a sense of what they can expect in a Toastmasters meeting. It's also not having experienced members available to answer questions once the meeting is finished. Chances are once that meeting is finished, people are heading back to their office, they're heading back to their lives. They may have questions, but they're not necessarily sticking around. That's why we have to make sure that those questions are answered during the meeting. And it's also not a speaking opportunity for guests to participate. And this one sometimes throws people when they're creating a new club. This is not about having a table topic session and suddenly we're going to be calling on some people who have never been in Toastmasters. Some may be brave enough to answer a question. That's not what this initial meeting is all about. The specific roles that we're going to have in the agenda will obviously be someone chairing the meeting. There will be table topics and there will be a table topic master, but it's going to be an experienced table topic master who asks a question of an experienced member responding in a table topic. This is not about getting individuals to participate. Are there any questions in terms of that initial meeting? Tanya Hall is very good about setting up the meeting. I would suggest anyone who is interested in setting up a club now, if you haven't already contacted Tanya to get an initial meeting set up and asking her what a typical agenda should look like, Tanya would be the initial person that I would suggest you get in touch with. And if you have been trying to charter a club for some time and you are feeling stressed because it hasn't happened yet, you may want to go back and look at how your initial meeting was handled and if there is some way of paring it down to start again with an initial meeting and move on from there. So let's look at it from the point of view is that you've had your initial meeting. Where should we focus our energy? My opinion, we should be focusing on two things. As soon as the initial meeting is finished and we start setting up meetings for interested members to come in. Our meeting should make sure that it's clear what the educational program is. The agenda can have some facet of what that educational program is. It could be the actual icebreakers. It could be the evaluation under pathways of how we evaluate that icebreaker. Whatever we're doing, it could be clarifying what the various paths are, but there should be in the meeting, the subsequent meetings, don't get sucked into going into your typical 1 week after another meetings, make sure that you are focusing on the educational program and they're having a good sense of what they can expect once the club charters. And the second thing that they should be focusing on is the potential members' needs. Sometimes as experienced members, when we're setting up a new club, we think we know best. We figure people are going to be nervous, therefore let's focus on that. They are in a corporate environment, maybe they have specific needs. Best thing to do is the members, the individuals who have indicated that they are interested in finding out more and are sticking around, find out why they are there, if they have a specific need, and then focus your agendas and your activities onto meeting those members' needs. The sooner they see how relevant the program is for them, the more quickly they will be to sign up, and even more quickly they will talk to their friends and colleagues about coming in and having it meet their needs as well. For me, there's a number of things that matter up until the moment when we're chartering. And yes, I know it's funny when the first point that I list there is getting chartered. Once again, I've been involved in a number of clubs that are in charter process. Some of them go on for a year or more. They're holding meetings every week. People are taking on roles. They're feeling good about it, but they're feeling frustrated because they're not getting to charter strength. And chances are it's because the activities of the meetings and the people that are setting up the clubs is not about getting chartered. And we all know that getting chartered means we have to have charter strength of 20 members. And that should be a basic focus on anyone who is looking to set up a club. Once again, it sounds funny, but I'm sure I'm getting some nods from people like Gina. You can set up your club agenda and feel really good about it, but if you're not getting members in, you're not promoting, you're not getting out into the community or the corporation, you're not going to be chartered, and people are going to drop off and you're going to be very frustrated. So getting chartered and all of that, what that entails is the basic. Now, growing the membership base. This is a couple of key points here for me. When I talk about growing the membership base, it should be very clear that anyone who has expressed interest and has possibly given you an application is not a member. People think that they've filled out an application and they're attending meetings every week of this club in charter status, and they feel that they are members. It's very clear to me, and it should be very clear to them, they're not members. None of them are members, unless they're dual, until the club charters. And so the sooner they focus on themselves helping the people who are trying to get this club chartered, getting it to charter strength, that's when they'll become members. So that's when what I'm talking about in terms of growing that membership base. None of them are members until they charter. The third thing is retaining those interested members, and it's a reason why I say that be very careful about your agendas. Don't put them with so many activities, so many roles, that when you're starting out very early and there are not a number of members or interested members yet, and you have people taking on 2 roles, they suddenly feel overwhelmed or feel that it's too much work. Make sure that the club agendas are focusing on the basics, to have someone who's chairing, to have a speaker, table topics, evaluation, and timing. As you get more people involved, you can start putting in roles, but don't feel that you have to add in roles just because you have a lot of people that suddenly have interest. They can all do table topics. They can give speeches. They shouldn't be taking on so many different roles that once again, they feel like they're a member and they feel like they are a member of a club. They're not a member and they're not a member of a club. And they'll only get that true meeting feeling once the club has chartered. Now, it's very important to determine who's responsible. Many times I've seen clubs in charter that look to set up their club officers very early on. And suddenly the club officers, specifically the vice president of education, is starting to set up the agendas. They may or may not be feeling a little overwhelmed. A vice president of membership suddenly feels the pressure that they are the one and only people to try and bring in people. Vice president of public relations in particular feels the pressure that they're the ones now that have to get the word out. It's very important when you're shortly after that initial meeting, what is it that we really want these potential members to do? There's time to introduce the club officer roles, and the timing is extremely, extremely crucial. We know that there are club sponsors, and there's 2 of them. Club sponsors are responsible for making sure that this club charters. They can work with people within the club, or they can start doing PR and showing interested people in the club. Here's what we talk about when we say we're going to reach into the community, we're going to reach into the corporation, we're going to set up the agendas. The more the club sponsors can actually show and model the way, the easier it will be for people to step forward to eventually say, okay, I think I could do that now, having seen what someone else is doing. But too often they feel that setting up a club officers immediately is the next step, and you really have to be very careful in terms of how you do that. Some specifics that I want to talk about is when I say that agendas that educate. Once again, as club members, we're so used to agendas. We know that we set up themes. We know what roles are supposed to be filled out. You have to think of the agenda and setting up the agenda in terms of the people who are in front of you. They're not yet members. They're still new to Toastmasters. They're still trying to figure out what this table topic is, how the protocol is so formal in some sense. You want to make sure, and that's the reason why I'm saying be very careful about getting someone in as vice president of education too soon. You want to set up those agendas that will educate our potential members. So in other words, if we have speeches coming up and we want some of our potential members to say do icebreakers, we know that there are better speaker series. The really nice thing is, even though you no longer get credit after this year for giving some of those educationals, nice thing is Toastmasters has enabled us to download PDFs of every single presentation under better speaker series. And I personally am going to make sure that I keep those even after Pathways is our one and only educational program. There's a number of good educationals that we would want to give prior to someone giving an icebreaker. You know, they have ones on beginning your speech. They have them on selecting your topic. Organizing your speech is another good one. There are educationals on impromptu speaking that should be given so that people feel comfortable about how they organize a table topic. Once again, if you've determined the potential members' needs, and if some of them have indicated they are nervous about speaking, there's ones on controlling your fear. So making sure that the agenda is not just having people give speeches or having table topics. Make sure that it's relevant, that it's educational for these people. They'll then get a better sense of how they will be able to learn from Toastmasters. There should also be regular updates on the status of the charter. I've seen this with clubs in formation that for some reason it's a hidden secret. No one in the club ever talks about where they're at with regards to how many interested people they have signed up. They don't talk in terms of how close or how far they are from the 20 needed. It's important that the potential members know that that status of the charter is important, because until then you're not a member and this isn't a club. And we want to get you as a member, and we want to form this club. So it's important to give regular updates. And as I mentioned, the relevant educational presentations are so crucial. That's one of the things I noticed as soon as I came into Toastmasters. Those educational presentations were unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was almost like the training was specifically geared to me, the newbie. And I appreciated that. I wasn't coming into an organization that assumed, oh, everybody knows what's going on here, you just have to get with the program. No, when a club is in formation, we're all in the same boat. And that's a really nice feeling for new members or potential new members. Let's say you're now successful. You have been working the program, you've been updating everyone, and you've now chartered. To me, there are a couple of things that we should focus on to ensure the success of that club continuing. One is looking at the club meetings and what are they going to focus on? Once again, we know what a typical agenda looks like, and we know what those typical roles are. How are we going to structure what our meetings are? We don't necessarily have to have, depending on how active they are, any meeting roles that we put in there should be very clear as to why they're there. So for instance, we don't just have a grammarian or a word of the day for no good reason, or we say, oh yes, it's important to increase our vocabulary. If this isn't something that's really going to resonate with a corporate club, then don't bother. The grammarian is a very important role because we want to make sure people see how often they use crutch words, fillers. Once you start seeing and hearing feedback on this, I think this is where really that self-awareness comes into play and one of the real strengths of Toastmasters. But make sure that the meetings continue to focus on member needs. Now that you've chartered, you will have determined, obviously, who's going to be the club officers. How is that going to work? For instance, in some corporate clubs, if the corporation pays for the membership, the role of the treasurer is going to be different than your typical, when you go to a TLI and you hear all the various things that a treasurer does. Therefore, we have to make sure that we're not fitting the corporation into the Toastmaster model. We want to make sure the Toastmaster model is relevant to the club. For instance, anyone out there who's looking to charter a club and hasn't read Pat Johnson's latest book on corporate clubs and chartering them, it's an eye-opener. Yes, we have various club officer roles. She's even suggesting that in future we change the terminology. And it's worth looking at now, especially if you are looking to charter a corporate club. Just make sure that the club officers' roles are relevant to whichever environment they're working in, and that they're very clear in terms of what it is they need to do. Because chances are, when they go to their first training session, someone is going to come back and say, I had no idea I was supposed to do this, this, and this. And someone will have to be there to clarify to them so that they don't become confused thinking their club is different than a typical Toastmaster club. That's where club mentors come in. And the club mentors can be twofold. The club mentors that are the formal mentors. I know that they indicate that the mentor should be there for 6 months. I think that's Toastmasters' way of saying, at a minimum, club mentor, you need to hang around and help this club get on the right foot in order to get credit. But as a club mentor personally, I've never just stuck around with a club for 6 months. As a matter of fact, I'm a club mentor of a club that chartered last April, and I indicated to them when I signed up for mentor that I would stay with them the first 2 years. And I will evaluate after those 2 years to see if they're good. Now, I can tell you the club is functioning extremely well. And chances are at the end of my 2 years, I probably can move off and then just be a proud mentor who comes in every time they ask me, because I'm sure, Gina, you're the same way. Once you've been a sponsor, a mentor of a club, and they ask you to come in and do anything, man, it's hard to say no. Where we should focus our energy, these are my opinions. You may have different ones. First, once a club is chartered, I think it's important to look at the club success plan and set up a success plan with the club officers. Now, I'm not suggesting that you pull out the manual with the club success plan and complete the, I think it's 38 pages worth. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is every club that's just chartered should have a discussion, not just with the club officers, but with the members themselves. What are their individual goals? What is it that they wish to accomplish in the upcoming year? And by upcoming year, I look at some of the clubs that have chartered this year, and some of them started in August, and then we had October, November. The year finishes June 30th. Therefore, it's important to look at the club success plan from now, when we charter, till June 30th. Some individual members will have goals that they wish to accomplish in this year. And maybe they want to try and do their icebreaker. Who knows what they want to do, but the success plan should be not just on who wants to attain an educational achievement, but in terms of what their personal goals are. And document. I'm a big believer in documenting. What gets written down and followed up gets done. It's also important to focus on charter strength. The idea that we can now take our foot off the gas, we hit our 20 or more members for charter. You'll have membership renewals coming up if you chartered in the fall, you'll have renewals coming up in the spring. Chances are, if you did it properly, you collected enough dues. But what happens when the following year in the fall comes up? If members don't quite understand what it means to stay at charter strength, what it means for a club to maintain that minimum of 20, they may not realize what's required of them after they have given their initial dues. And I think it's very important that we focus our energies on that. We have club mentors and we have club sponsors. I would hope that a club sponsor doesn't disappear. The good ones that I know of stick around. It's important that sponsors and mentors determine what are they both going to do. There's normally 4 of them. Now that the club is chartered, sponsors don't have to say, well, my job was to bring us to charter. Most successful clubs that I've seen, sponsors and mentors are both interested and active to get that club chartered, and both sponsors and mentors are interested in helping the clubs continue. You just want to make sure you're not tripping over each other. For instance, the mentor could say, well, I'll focus with the club officers to make sure they understand what their roles are, and I will see about setting up a mentoring program. Sponsor may say, okay, I'll make sure that we continue to focus on our charter strength, whatever it is, just to make sure that everybody knows what it is they're supposed to do. And the other area that I like to focus my energy on is the actual individual member responsibility. Sometimes it gets lost when people are setting up their goals. It gets lost about signing up for meeting roles. And after a while, when you've been a timer, you've done a table topic, maybe you've taken on grammarian, they've chaired a meeting, it seems to be the same old, and they drop off. They don't necessarily want to sign up. So what I like to do is, especially given that there are going to be new members, it's a given that once we've chartered, because we are continuing to focus on ensuring that we are staying on charter strength, and chances are we're going to lose 25% just because they have lives, they've changed jobs, they've moved away from the community. So we have to continue to bring in new members. When we sign up to be a table topic master, and guests who are coming in or new members are taking on table topics for the first time, how important it is to have those speaking opportunities. If someone didn't sign up for table topics, then those new members wouldn't have an opportunity to participate in the meeting. Same with evaluations. We all love to sign up as Toastmasters to give speeches, but it's so important, and we know how much we value getting feedback on evaluations. It's important for us to sign up to evaluate others. I jump every time someone has signed up for an icebreaker. I hover. I don't like to jump in, but I'm telling you, in my mind, I can hardly wait to be the evaluator of the icebreaker. I remember the evaluator of my first icebreaker, and that evaluate to motivate, which is what we in Toastmasters say evaluations are supposed to be about, came through loud and clear. I was so motivated and so blown away by the level of detail that that individual saw in my speech. I like to give back that same feeling as an evaluator to an icebreaker. So we want to make sure that all members know it's not just about working the program, doing your own icebreaker, giving your repeat speeches, researching. It's about taking on and signing up for those roles so others can benefit from the program as well. And the other is mentoring new members. When I first came in and was assigned a mentor and saw the value, I had no idea at what stage I myself would be asked to be a mentor. I think it's important, especially for a new club, as clubs are moving along and new members are coming in, we can see some of the experienced members who may want to immediately link in. They have a good affinity with some of the new members coming in. But consider this. One of the real strengths that I see in new clubs is that when people, not just the evaluators, are standing up and giving evaluations, but you can hear after the meeting is finished, you hear people going over to someone who's just given an icebreaker, congratulating them, indicating how proud they were, how they love some aspect of their speech. That's informal mentoring, and that informal mentoring goes a long way for retaining members and wanting them to stay. There are a couple of things that I really believe are extremely important. What really matters? I think the link between the Pathways Educational Program, and it's going to become even stronger once July 1st rolls around and it's the only game in town. That link between Pathways and members' goals in terms of what it is they personally want to improve, either on their communication or leadership, and the roles in our meetings, that's really important. We don't want them to simply see Toastmasters is all about taking on a club meeting week after week, and that's how I'm going to get better as a speaker or a leader. You're not. When you work the program, and you'll be doing that work on your own, and then you come in and you deliver what it is you've learned, and you get feedback on whether you've actually benefited and you've learned, that's when it starts to clue in. But the members' goals, many clubs, the new clubs that I've seen, if they've put in a new mentoring program, or even if they haven't, someone, and usually the mentor, the sponsor, does a check with the members to see what brought you into the club in the first place. What was your personal goal? Have you made any improvement in that regard? Chances are, if they say they've made improvement, they'll stick around. Member retention is such a key. We don't want for a second for new club members to think that the only thing we're interested in is bringing in new members. It's extremely important to make sure that the meetings are of high caliber, that it's not the same people that we're relying on all the time, that people are sharing the wealth in terms of taking on roles, and they're not just taking on speaking roles, they're chairing the meetings as well. This will go a long way to connecting members, and when they're connected, they'll stay. Bringing in new members, obviously that has to be a focus, and it has to continue to be a focus. Otherwise, I've seen clubs that have chartered and 6 months later, they're in club coach territory because they just didn't focus on what matters. And the last one is the mentors and sponsors have to be visible. People have to know who the mentors and sponsors are. They should know who they were before they charter, but some clubs this year are chartering extremely quickly. The people who are now members may not know who the mentors and sponsors are. It's important that they be visible and that the people in the club know what it means to be a mentor and a sponsor. I promised that there would be some time for questions. Does anyone have any particular questions? Anything that they would like to share?
Yes, Richard here.
Yes.
On your first foil there, when you were talking about the initial meetings, I've been through this once or twice with Tanya on the demo meetings, helping here and there.
Yep.
But I also found that almost everything that you said there can be applied to the guests coming to a club meeting later. So I found it very helpful to remind them, you know, it's not a demo meeting, it's an actual meeting, but what's in it for them? what are the highlights of Toastmasters and the meeting, and an opportunity for them to do the Q&A. Sometimes we don't have that ability. So this webinar, thank you very much. Very, very good filled in information there, but I think I can also use that for helping to convert guests to members.
You know, I really like that aspect, Richard. I can see how you've really embraced the program. Too often when we have meetings and we have guests, it's so true. We think running a meeting and having a really high quality meeting is going to sell it. But possibly having time that if they have any questions during the meeting, we often say if you have any comments or if you'd like to make any comments, but maybe we should ask if you have any questions, please feel free to bring them up and we'll be happy to answer them. So thank you for that. Anything else come to mind?
Hi there, this is Tracy. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. I'm grateful that you mentioned that book. I did help to sponsor a corporate club they chartered about 4 months ago. And that book was very, very helpful because I was new at that job. The challenges we found were that, with corporate anyways, that it was very difficult to get them engaged, I want to say. Even 4 months in, we haven't been able to do officer training. We haven't been able to get them nailed down to club success plan, PR. It's just been a big struggle because they have that 1 hour meeting and they just can't seem to get it together outside of that for any executive meetings.
You know, it's a fascinating dilemma and you're not alone. I remember first time I was vice president of membership, and someone wisely said to me that yes, we all have activities to do and a life outside and we're very busy at work, but what would happen if this club folded, if there were no members any longer? And that hit me because I had seen very quickly the benefits to me. And so making the connection that if I made a bit of effort in terms of ensuring that people talked to colleagues and brought them in, that club would not fold. And so we've all, I don't want to say we all, most of us have worked outside of the home such that we all know what it's like to have a busy day. But when it comes to personal development and ensuring that that venue is still there, I think it would be useful, maybe not in a meeting, but a one-on-one conversation with individuals who are saying that they're too busy to find out what it is that they would be willing to do.
Okay.
For instance, when I was vice president of membership, one of the things I realized was vice president of membership doesn't have to be the person who tries to get all of the new members in. As long as our meetings were high caliber and everyone brought people in, my job was done. And I remember that first year as vice president of membership, we brought in 10 members. And I remember people going, oh, wow, you did such a great job. And I went, are you kidding? It wasn't me at all. It was the club and it was the members. That's what convinced people once they came in the door that this was for them. So depending on what the role is that they're just saying they can't do it. Same with the education. I mean, I've been a member of other associations that indicated that they gave officer training because every association has officers, but Toastmasters truly has specific training for our roles. And it's so rare nowadays that you actually get people who are willing to share their experience with you. The people who feel that they don't have time for that, maybe they might be surprised if they actually went. If they actually went to the training and then said it was a complete waste of time, I'm sure the district would really be interested in their feedback and they maybe want to change it. But for them to think that there isn't anything that they can learn, that would be like saying, well, I guess there was nothing you could learn from the Toastmaster program either. And we all know we learn from that. So maybe there is something that you could learn in your club officer role as well. But I would have one-on-one conversations on that. It'd be worth it.
Well, we did have a TLI yesterday, and 4 of them did come to that one. So
oh, good for you, Tracy.
It's a good start. I mean,
absolutely.
I'm from the corporate world, and I have a corporate club that I started with, so I'm very familiar, and I have lots of ideas, and you know, I can make quick work if they want to implement things. Here's a lot of ideas. Just pick 1 or 2 and go with them. But hopefully now, I'm just concerned about the next renewals.
You know, well, yes, and that's another question. Yep. I mean, you know, having those, there should be no surprises. People should be talking to each individual, and are they benefiting from the program? Are they benefiting? Do they see improvements? And if they see improvements, they want to renew. If they don't see improvements, then that may mean something needs to be changed with how the club or the meetings are functioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're down to at least 50%, even just regular attendance. So there's a lot of employees just not participating at this point. So,
do you know why?
Well, yeah, because they haven't reached out and had any conversations, encouraged them. They haven't done any PR. I mean,
okay, so those individuals were interested initially, yeah, and then somehow the work, you know, I might even, not that it would necessarily be that, but I might even take a look at how many roles you have on the agenda, and if they're getting, if they've had to take on too many roles, too much, it might just be good just to see. But I would ask them for sure what's up. Just be honest and tell me how come you're not showing up.
Right, and I can't do it for them because I'm not there. I don't know the people. I mean, I'm there at regular meetings, but you don't have an opportunity at corporate in an hour to really get to know anyone too much.
Yes, and the key is that there is time outside of the meeting, and if they can schedule a meeting for their work, they can usually schedule a 15-minute call to have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I'll keep working on them. Thank you.
Good for you, for sure. Anything else come to mind?
Sue?
Yes.
Okay, this is Marie-André Lessard who is speaking. As you may know, I conducted the conference call in 2019, and one question that was often asked was about money. By that I mean that the dream scenario is you do the demo meeting and you have 20 membership forms signed, but sometimes you have 12. And the question was about how do you collect the money? First of all, where do you put it? Do you put it in another club bank account? And then for the 8 missing members, do you collect and deposit as things progress? The webinar title is New Club Next Step. So could you tell us a bit about how do you do this?
You know, I'm not a big fan, Marie-André. If you've got 12 and you don't know how much time is going to be from the time you have 12 interested to the 20 plus for chartering, I'm not a fan of collecting checks or the actual money. My preference is to indicate credit card and that it will be processed when you charter. And the reason I'm saying that is I've seen it with new clubs that, okay, you get 12 members, you've done a demo in October, but you're not chartering until, I don't know, let's say it could even be a year from then, 9 months. The sponsor is making sure that when they submit the dues, they want to make sure that they are submitting the amount so that they don't, they have they take it to the date of renewal, plus they have enough money for 6 months after. And so you've got to be very careful in terms of the timing. So I've seen too many times some clubs, if you look at our prospective clubs, some of them have been chartering since 2018. If any of them have collected any checks, you know, they're either stale dated or they've indicated, okay, I'm giving this check back. I'm not a big fan when you've got the 12 and you're collecting the money and you're putting it in the bank right then and there. I'm not a big fan of that.
So, maybe it's a very wide question. So, say I'm gonna ask for detail, but then if someone else has another question, it's okay. We could take another moment to get more into details. But it's just that it means that you have free room to meet. If you have no money, it means you must have free room to meet to get your meeting, and also say how do the members get access to pathways. But as you said, it's not yet a club, and they are not yet members.
And you know, it's a very important. I mean, I don't want to give anything away for free. And so the idea that somehow they're getting access to the program and they're working the program and they're not yet a member of a club that's chartered, I'm not a big fan at all. There's no incentive. You have to give them incentive. You have to show the members, these potential members, I'd love to get you more into the program. I'd love to be able to give you more than what you've got, but you're not a member yet, and you're not a member until we charter. So our focus has to be, let's bring in the members, and then we'll get everybody all set up.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's my take.
Okay.
Do I have a question?
Yes, Jim.
It's in regard to, so after you've chartered, and the question of importance of mentoring, if you only have, say, 4 experienced Toastmasters that you think could mentor, but you have 14 new members to Toastmasters, do you have any suggestions on how one might handle that?
You know, me personally, what I've noticed in new clubs when they've set up, I wish that all 14 new members would want to have a mentor, but I have found that a number of people, when they first start the program, it's either they're not used to mentoring or they just don't feel comfortable with it. They don't all necessarily want to have a mentor right off the bat. So the better thing, I think, that if you've got 4 experienced people, is to see if they are willing to mentor people, which chances are they do. Most of the time they've got some affiliation with the new members. But there also could be, new members who, there's usually some that stand out, that either are very upbeat, they're motivational, they seem to like congratulating. You know, Richard, you strike me as someone who was like that when you first started. You just seem really positive about giving people feedback. And so just because the person is not experienced doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't be a good person to be there to help them. Because I find that as a mentor, when somebody is asking me questions that I don't know the answer to, it's fabulous because I'm getting something out of it as well. Not only am I seeing somebody shine and grow, but I'm learning by having to go and ask other people. And I know that there are 4 experienced people in the club that if they're asking me those questions, I know I have somebody else to go to. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all 14 are going to want to have a mentor, but it may mean that some of these people may see the benefit of mentoring once somebody else has taken on mentoring. You may have experienced friends. Most of the time when we are looking to charter a club, we bring in other experienced people every now and then. Sometimes they get an affiliation. I remember one of my clubs that I was coming in, I hadn't planned on being a mentor. I was just helping out the people who were sponsoring, and you just get a connection with the club. Next thing you know, you're sticking around, you're helping them, you're mentoring, and then you don't mind mentoring someone else that you've made a connection with. So there could be other people who attend meetings that are willing to help. You know, especially with things like Zoom now, you don't have to be, you don't have to do everything one-on-one in person. You can do it on the phone. You can do it via Zoom or Skype.
And how reluctant are you to assign someone to offer some mentoring advice that doesn't attend the club regularly? Like perhaps an experienced Toastmaster that would offer to answer questions, but hasn't really been to club meetings.
You know, it depends on what type of mentoring the person wants. If the person wants mentoring with their speeches, then at the very minimum, the advice that they're giving, the mentor should attend a meeting so they can see firsthand if the advice and the feedback is paying off for the individual. But depending on what kind of questions they have, they don't necessarily have to be at a meeting every week to answer those questions. For instance, I remember when I first started, I heard things like area and division and district, and I hadn't been out of my club. I didn't quite understand that. Well, my mentor was experienced in the district and was able to answer those questions, but she didn't have to be at the meeting every week to have answered those questions. So it just depends on what kind of questions are coming up from the person wanting to be mentored, how involved or active the mentor has to be.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Seeing none. I personally am very, very, very grateful for the people who have attended this session and are either mentoring or sponsoring or interested in bringing in a new club. It's an exciting time. I think of the number of people that I know that have come forward in the district and started in a brand new club, and wow, wouldn't our district be at a loss if they hadn't had that new club to introduce them to Toastmasters into District 61. Thank you for your time. And Marie-Andre, especially to you, thank you for setting this up. And Craig, as always, thank you for being there. Just knowing you were there if something went wrong is always a joy.
Always very welcome.
Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care,
you.
all. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks, Sue. See you later.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.